Not to tattletale, but 0 members of Team Clark were very present for that. But no, we were just, we had a very...
That really needed to be mentioned.
From the moment she touched the floor in a Fever jersey, Caitlin Clark was not just a rookie. She was the main attraction. Everywhere she went, crowds followed. The arenas that once averaged 7,000 or 8,000 fans were now packed to capacity. Upper decks that had not been used in years were suddenly open. Tickets were being resold at NBA-level prices. People were traveling across state lines just to catch a glimpse of her in person. It was not just local buzz, it was national attention. Clark's WNBA debut pulled in over 2 million viewers. That was more than the average NBA regular season game. It was more than every Major League Baseball game that day. It was the most watched WNBA game in over 2 decades, and it was just the beginning. The Fever started the season poorly from a win-loss perspective, but that did not matter. When Caitlin played, people watched. Ratings surged. Merchandise sales exploded. Her jersey sold out before she even played a game. SportsCenter started leading with WNBA highlights. Podcasts that had never once covered the league were suddenly debating her impact daily. This was not just a spike, it was a wave. And the league felt it. When Clark was injured and missed 2 weeks, WNBA viewership dropped by over 50%. That is not an exaggeration. The data was clear. When she was on the court, people tuned in. When she was not, they didn't. Her impact was not just hype. It was measurable, it was revenue, it was relevance. She brought a fan base that had never watched women's basketball. She brought kids. She brought men in their 20s who were obsessed with Steph and saw a new kind of superstar emerging. She brought college fans who followed her from Iowa. And she brought attention from sports media outlets that had never given the WNBA more than a passing mention. Clark turned the WNBA into something it had never consistently been before. She made it feel important. She made it feel like it mattered. And that kind of star power is not just rare, it is priceless. Yet the reaction she received from within the league, that part was far more complicated. Because with every sellout crowd, with every viral clip, with every headline that started with her name, came an undercurrent of tension. You could feel it in the post-game interviews. You could see it in the eyes of veterans. You could hear it in the subtle jabs during broadcasts. The WNBA had gotten what it always said it wanted. But now that it had it, the league seemed unsure of how to handle it. Was this a new chapter or an uncomfortable spotlight? Was Caitlin Clark a savior or a symbol of everything the league felt it had been denied for too long? That is the question that would define her rookie season. And it would not take long for the cracks to show. It started with small things. A glance here, a comment there, a weird moment in a press conference that felt a little colder than it should have. At first, you could chalk it up to competition. After all, this is professional basketball. Nobody is obligated to roll out the red carpet for a rookie no matter how big her name is. But then it started to escalate. There were physical plays that felt excessive. An elbow here. A hard foul that looked less like defense and more like a message. Caitlin Clark was not just getting bumped. She was getting targeted. Her name, her fame, and her spotlight came with a price. Then came the all-star voting. Fans voted Clark as the top vote-getter in the entire league. She had more votes than anyone, veteran or rookie, but when the player vote came in, she was ranked 9th among guards. 9th. Despite being the biggest draw in the league by far, she was almost left off the all-star roster altogether. That was not just an oversight, that was a statement. And it was not subtle. It confirmed what a lot of people were starting to suspect. There was a divide inside the WNBA. On one side was Clark and everything she represented. Massive popularity, new fans, outside attention, and the chance to reshape the league's future. On the other side were some of the veterans, some of the old guard, and perhaps even some of the league's own leadership, all struggling to adjust to a world where Caitlin Clark was the main character. Then came the Kelsey Plum moment. During a post-game press conference at the All-Star break, Plum casually mentioned that no members of Team Clark had shown up to a pre-game protest meeting organized by players. The implication was clear.
Not to tattletale, but 0 members of Team Clark were very present for that. But no, we were just, we had a very...
That really needed to be mentioned.
Clark and her side were not showing solidarity. It was an odd thing to say, especially in public. Especially on a night when everyone was supposed to be celebrating unity and progress. Even Plum's teammate Sabrina Ionescu looked visibly uncomfortable. The moment went viral and suddenly the tension around Clark was not just whispered about. It was out in the open. All of it raised a deeper question. Why was the league and some of its stars so hesitant to embrace the one person who was clearly elevating everything around them? The answer is not simple, but it is rooted in real human emotion. And it begins with one word: resentment. Caitlin Clark is not just a basketball player, she is a cultural flashpoint. She arrived in the league with more media attention than any rookie in WNBA history. More endorsement deals, more followers, more questions about her future than perhaps any player not named Diana Taurasi or Candace Parker. She was not just a great player, she was a phenomenon, and with that status came friction. At the heart of this tension lies a deeper issue: culture. Because Caitlin Clark did not come from the same basketball background as many of her WNBA peers. She did not play in a power system like UConn or South Carolina. She played for Iowa, a team that was good, but not dominant until she made it so. She is a white woman in a predominantly black league. She is soft-spoken off the court, but carries herself with visible swagger during games. She is from a state that is not a traditional basketball factory, and she is not shy about expressing herself on the floor. For some, Clark is refreshing. For others, she is irritating. To the outside world, she represents the best-case scenario for women's basketball, someone who can break through into the mainstream. But to some insiders, she represents something else: an outsider, a disruption, a player who is changing the rules without paying the same dues. This is not a new story. Sports are filled with examples of generational talents who upset the status quo. Serena Williams, Tiger Woods, Allen Iverson, LeBron James. They all faced skepticism, criticism, and hostility when they first broke through. Some of that pushback was about race. Some was about money. Some was about fear. And some of it was about the discomfort that comes from watching someone bend the sport in their direction. With Clark, there is another layer, because the WNBA has spent decades trying to earn respect from the wider sports world. Veterans fought through low pay, bad travel conditions, and indifference from media and fans. For many, that struggle became part of their identity. So when a rookie shows up and suddenly the league is on the front page of every sports outlet, it does not always feel like a victory. It can feel like a slight. Why did it take her? Why now? Why not us? This is not about Clark being unlikable, it is about what she symbolizes, a player who is getting attention not just for her talent, but for her timing, her look, and her marketability. The league has to navigate that tension, because ignoring it only makes the divide worse. And pretending that Clark is just another rookie is equally dishonest. She is not just another player, she is the earthquake the WNBA has been waiting for. The question is, will the league stand on solid ground after the shaking stops? Caitlin Clark was a once-in-a-generation marketing opportunity, the kind of breakout star that most leagues spend decades hoping to find. But instead of embracing that moment with open arms, the WNBA responded with hesitation, deflection, and at times outright awkwardness. When Clark entered the league, there should have been a full-scale promotional blitz, features on every WNBA platform, exclusive content that followed her journey, a national campaign that highlighted the next era of basketball, centered around her and the rising stars she brought with her. Instead, the league took a quieter approach. It made statements about parity. It focused on spreading the spotlight. It downplayed the notion that one player could define an entire league. That is a noble idea, but it is not how sports work. The NBA did not hesitate to market Michael Jordan. The NFL leaned into Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. Serena Williams became the face of tennis not just because of her talent, but because the sport embraced her as such. Sports leagues need stars, and when they arrive, they need to be promoted relentlessly. Clark's presence created real economic growth. She moved merchandise, she filled arenas, she brought in sponsors, she made non-fans care. Yet the league often seemed more interested in muting her success than magnifying it. The WNBA commissioner's official statements repeatedly lumped Clark into a group with other rookies, minimizing the obvious truth that she was the main driver of attention. There were no commercials that made her the centerpiece, no unified narrative that told her story in a way that brought casual fans deeper into the league's world. When she was left off the Team USA Olympic roster, the league did not push back. It did not question the decision. It barely acknowledged the missed opportunity. Imagine the NBA leaving LeBron off Team USA in 2004. Imagine a player generating the most attention in decades and being treated like just another rookie. The result is a narrative vacuum, one that gets filled by online speculation, divisive debates, and culture war talking points. Instead of steering the conversation, the league is constantly reacting to it. That is not a strategy, that is a problem. And the longer it goes on, the harder it becomes to reset the story. The WNBA is now standing at a historic crossroads. It has a generational talent who brings in viewers, fans, and revenue. It has more media attention than it has ever had, but it also has a growing divide that threatens to derail its momentum. Caitlin Clark is not going anywhere. She will keep improving. She will keep drawing attention. She will keep hitting shots from 30 feet out that defy logic and expectation. And with every game, more eyes will turn toward the league. More fans will tune in. More girls will see someone who makes them believe they can do it too. The question now is not whether Caitlin Clark will be great. She already is. The question is whether the WNBA will rise to meet the moment she represents. The league must decide what kind of future it wants. Does it want to cling to the old ways, protecting hierarchy and tradition at the expense of growth? Or does it want to lean into this new era where players like Clark are the gateway to global relevance? It is not about favoritism, it is about vision. Other stars do not need to be pushed aside, but the league must understand that having a face is not a threat. It is a gift. It is a marketing tool. It is a rallying point. When the NBA embraced Jordan, it didn't erase the other stars. It elevated the league. When Serena rose to dominance, tennis as a whole benefited. That is how star power works. The WNBA has a choice to make. It can embrace Caitlin Clark fully, not just in highlights or ticket sales, but in storytelling, promotion, and positioning. Or it can let her continue to thrive in spite of the league's efforts. A symbol of what could have been if only things had been handled differently. Because this moment will not last forever. Eventually, fans will either feel embraced or alienated. Eventually, the media will either see a league ready to rise or one still stuck in its own shadow. And eventually, Caitlin Clark herself will either be celebrated as the spark of a new era or remembered as the superstar who outgrew the league that never quite knew what to do with her. The window is open. The world is watching. And for the first time in a long time, the WNBA has the spotlight. The only question left is, what will it do with it?